Hey, how's it going? Kobayashi Island, episode 3. This episode we're going to be doing the old town, which will start off here with the train station. I know I've kind of been thinking about this in terms of this old town kind of started off as a fishing village, and it was a much smaller island, and then it over time became a really big city. And I think this train station kind of takes away from the authenticity of that, because I don't know if there would really be a train station going right through the middle of Old Town in a place where this is the first city. But maybe this is some sort of project at some point, in the not so distant past, that they tore down some stuff and made this train station or something. I don't know how to really rectify the history of it in my mind, but this place needs a train station in order to kind of function once the city gets bigger. So I decided to just make it sort of front and center, even though maybe that's not the most authentic way to do it. I wanted to play with the kind of elevations and kind of make sort of a hill here, leading up to what would be like an old Japanese style castle kind of up on a little hill. So that's sort of the centerpiece of this old town, the castle, and the train station is a little bit lower than the castle, but a little bit higher than the main street. So right now I'm kind of trying to figure out what buildings are going to look good in this main little strip here of shops and what I would imagine to be a lot of fish restaurants and fish markets and that kind of thing. I'm also, pulling different residential buildings that would work well as in the neighborhood around here. I've made a couple Asian style cities in the past, and I kind of end up not really liking them so much because I just focus on really big buildings and really epic looking downtowns and stuff. And I think to make something that looks sort of real, there has to be a good amount of lower residential 1-2 story buildings that make up a good portion of the city, and it's not really going to feel authentic without it. So in this episode, a lot of time and effort goes into getting the look and the style of these smaller neighborhoods down. I wanted to stick with alleyways as the main streets around here, where there's not parking on either side of the street, so I end up adding a lot of prop cars in little driveways and stuff. I guess time will tell if that's really going to be an issue with the actual parking of Sims cars in the game, or if I can kind of get away with having minimal parking in this area, because it's not going to be a very dense area. But I think those alleys, how thin they are, kind of adds to the look of the area. It kind of makes it feel more cramped, and the houses are really close together, and they're pretty much just like a patio and some plants in the back instead of a real full backyard. So this here is like kind of the first block where I'm trying to decide what the style is going to look like, and then start putting houses along this little cliffside here overlooking the harbor. I'm not really happy with the way that these turned out. Maybe I'll come back to it at some point later. I mean, for now it's fine, but I think I made a dumb decision and kind of made these the nicest houses in the whole neighborhood with the biggest backyards. So I was thinking, these are the houses that have really the best view of the water. But later on, when I actually pressed play on the simulation and got things going, all these citizens who lived here started getting sick because they were too close to the docks and the pollution of some of these industrial buildings. It ended up being kind of like the worst housing in the whole place, even though I really spent a lot of time making their backyards look nice and giving them big plots of land and a nice ocean view. I'm kind of stuck with this. I don't really know exactly what to do on this little strip here along the harbor. I don't really feel like, like apartments or something lower income would look right, but I also don't feel like these big houses with big backyards really looks right, so I can come back to this later. I do like the effort that I put into some of these backyards. I think they look really unique and nice if they were not directly 5 feet from a harbor. This train station is another thing that took me a while to figure out. I wanted to kind of make an upper plaza sort of around the train station where there was benches and there was a nice view, and it was sort of like a central area of the city. Part of what makes it look good, I think, is you'll see me put down some decals, texture the ground. I think that helps a lot. And these fountains I also really like. I think they add to the plaza aspect of it. And you see me now kind of making these stairs that will lead up to the castle. I didn't figure it out until much later on in the episode, but having one on each side really makes it look better. So now you see me kind of place down the castle. What I'm thinking is going to be the centerpiece of this old town. You can tell this brown texture around the side of the castle looks disgusting. So I really spent way too much time putting retaining walls and ploppable pavement down. You see me speeding through this. Kind of making the way that you get up to the castle. I use invisible paths, which is a great mod that's like, I guess it's an asset, but it's basically the same thing as a pedestrian path, but it's invisible and doesn't make pavement on the ground and doesn't make lanterns or anything. So it's kind of tough to place down, but it's really nice for that kind of thing where you can get the Sims to walk, up and over something or somewhere where they wouldn't normally. So now here I'm making kind of the garden around the castle. I pulled up a few images online of Japanese castles and it gave me some ideas. It seemed like the kind of thing where if you looked at it from the satellite view on Google Maps, the gardens looked like, it didn't really look like much. It was kind of very wooded. Couldn't really see it, once you looked at pictures that were from ground level. It was like, oh wow, this is pretty amazing looking. So I didn't want to put too much effort into making this look crazy because I know from the satellite view, which is how you're playing the game usually, you can't really see the intricacies of the garden, the Japanese castle gardens. So I ended up just putting down a lot of trees, and I think, it's a little sloppy, but it's not terrible. And then some, you could really see it from the air, sort of. There was like a cherry blossom tree garden and a kind of like a little prayer area or something. I don't know. There's a couple of unique little parts of the garden, but most of it's just trees. So now I'm kind of placing down the railroad. What I think is the railroad is gonna be one of the most important parts of this city as it gets bigger. I want that to be the main form of transportation, kind of replace subways or trams, or there'll probably still be some buses, but I think my goal is to have most people take the trains, which is kind of dumb because I know if I'm trying to play to have not negative income at all times, trains aren't really the best way to do that. They're like the most expensive public transportation, but I do think they kind of look the coolest and they can go the fastest. So what you're seeing now is what I was talking about earlier. I'm adding another walkway on the other side of the plaza here, kind of make it look symmetrical. You'll see me in a little bit, once I finish this up, place down some statues. You'll see me kind of fix up this other side over here to match it, because I didn't really know what I was doing when I made that left side. Got the right side looking real good, and so now it's kind of evening it out, getting it symmetrical. It's starting to get a little quicker to put down another block of houses, because I now have all the houses that I know I like for this neighborhood pulled in that first block, so I was able to just use the Move It mod to pull ones that looked good for other places and place them down. I also kind of know now the order of operations for getting the residential neighborhood looking all right, where I first place down the houses and then I add a pavement or remove pavement to get the driveways and the backyards looking all right, and then place down some fences and some walls, and then some trees, and then some parked cars. And once I do those things, it usually ends up looking pretty good, and I'm done. So now that I kind of have that down, I think I'm going to be able to get through making residential areas a little fast. I mean, low-rise residential areas are the absolute slowest to make when you're building like this, where you're plopping down everything. It's always much more satisfying to put down a skyscraper or a big apartment complex, and all of a sudden makes a huge dent, an extra like 800 people or something. So it's not the most rewarding thing, but I do think these low-rise residential neighborhoods, when you kind of give them some sort of quick and easy detail with just some trees and some fences and some parked cars, it really makes the whole area look much more real. It makes the whole city look much more real. So I'm doing here kind of like the back side of the train station in between the two train tracks, kind of leading up the hill towards the castle, building another little residential area. This is going to be the last little bit of the episode here. Next episode, I'm going to kind of finish up the Old Town area on the other side and kind of start working on the back of the castle where it's going to become more urban. So until next time.